Great to have you. Firstly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming to Universal Business School. Very, very pleased to have you. We think that the pandemic is gone. It's not. It's here. It's not. But you guys have said, no matter what happens, pandemic, no pandemic, rain, no rain. Was it raining? Yes. Yeah, so you got wet. We are very delighted. It's the best time to come to our campus. So today I'm going to talk to you a few ideas which have governed my life. The title itself is a little crazy, right? I took it, I have to say there's no innovation here. I took it from the monk who sold his Ferrari. I was trying to think of something interesting. So I'm going to start with a quote which I'm very, I look up to, and one of my favorite authors, William Shakespeare. Why doth he bestride this narrow world like a colossus, while we petty men walk under his huge legs to find ourselves dishonorable graves? The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. What I'm going to tell you today is a little bit about my journey and some insights which you might be able to take back into your workplace. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the Alaskan. So in Alaska, there is this bear called the Alaskan, right? It's the big grizzly bear. These are the biggest bears in the world. So I'm going to start with a story. In this far corner of Alaska, a telecom company decided that, we need to get this place connected. So they put in $15 million of investment to erect poles and created this network of poles so that there can be mobile telephony in that remote village in the farthest part of Alaska. So they were all congratulating itself. Great. 2 months the service went fantastically well. Then what happened? They started getting customer complaints. The lines are dropping. And they were like, what's happening? Suddenly what's happening? Then they would realize that in 1 hour, the lines would be back again without doing anything. Then the lines are again dropping, then again, then up. So this was crazy. So they sat down in their boardroom and said, what do we do about it? So they're like, let's send a team to figure out and find out. And then they realized that in the furthest part of Alaska, there used to be snow. Right? It used to snow. So the lines would freeze over and the connection would go. So okay, now we understand why we've lost the connection. Why does it come back? They figured out that these Alaskan bears would want to, rub themselves against the pole to scratch their backs. So the ice is fresh, right? So it would just fall off. And there you go. The line is connected back. They're like, how do we deal with this situation, right? This is a big business problem. I've put in $15 million. So they come up and they try all kinds of solutions, don't fail. Cut to short. They're sitting in this board meeting. One young lady comes up and says, I have an idea. So they're saying, okay, yeah, we run out of ideas. We can't figure out how to fix this problem. She says, you know what? Bears love meat, right? And in that part of the world, the meat is the beef, right? So they said, we'll put beef in every pillar on these far locations. And because of the smell of the beef, the bear will try and get to the beef. And lo and behold, the thing will, the ice will fall off. Connection would come. I was like, we are a telecom company. The board was like, are you mad? Like, this is the most ridiculous idea you could ever have put in. Like, imagine the logistics of getting beef to all these places, putting beef on the wall. It's just like the most bizarre idea. So the CEO said, no, let's test it out. Let's put the first step, let's do a pilot. So they said, okay. So it figured out one remote region, put the meat on the poles, and perfect snowstorm would come. The bears would literally, they didn't have to move anything. The bears, because with the smell of the meat, would try and reach the meat. And the problem was solved. So actually the problem got solved. But these guys in the board are like, we can't take this to the rest of the whole region. I mean, this is bizarre, right? So the CEO is like, let me go and see it. So he takes a helicopter, flies to that remote region, and he gets to that area, and he actually sees the bears, these grizzly guys doing it. So he's like, it works. While he is returning, he just realizes that the wings of the helicopter are actually at that speed, the lines are actually getting unfrozen. The snow is melting. He comes back, he says, solution made. He thanks that lady. He said, you found the solution. So everybody said, what? You're going to put meat? He said, no. we've just found the solution to this problem. Every time there's a snowstorm, we'll get a weather report. Snowstorm, we'll just fly a sortie of helicopters over the lines and the answer will be done, right? What I'm trying to tell you with this story is that the idea wasn't this particular one. The idea was completely different, but the fact that you're willing to take that one step into that idea will reveal itself, another idea will possibly come. But what we as managers, and you're all in leading organizations, we tend to say, hell with that idea. Let's kill that idea. It doesn't make sense, right? And that's that bias we put because we don't know. But if we take that one step towards the idea, it opens up possibilities which you wouldn't have thought of. So the objective is, I do this with my teams every time I'm saying, my marketing team, what's your Alaskan? Every Monday morning, come to me with an Alaskan. Come to me with the crazy ideas. Because if you don't have ideas, you're going to be dead in the water. Someone is thinking. Someone of your competitors is thinking with a better idea. So keep having ideas. What's your Alaskan? Now everybody beats a deadline. I'm going to tell you a story. I was in London. You know, we were in a large team. We had, 4 Brits, 2 Americans, 1 German, 1 French, 1 Chinese, 1 Japanese, 1 Brazilian, me Indian, part of the strategic management group. So every quarter we would say, how do we grow the business? So one such quarterly meeting, my colleague, Heiko Kassens from Dusseldorf, Germany, he said, we need to acquire this $25 million company and it'll be great for our business. So he explained it, he made a presentation. So all of us agreed, yeah, this makes sense. So my boss, who's Mark Robson, Britisher, said, no, wait a minute. Yeah, okay, it makes sense, but we need to do due diligence. You know the concept of due diligence, right? So he said, okay, but who's going to do the due diligence? So my German friend, Heiko Kassens, he's like, I'm from Germany, I understand the German markets, puts up his hand and said, I'll do the due diligence. So my boss, Mark Robson, asked him, how long will you take to do it, Heiko? He says, 2 months. So Mark, I can see Mark's not too pleased. Now my American friend, my colleague in America, Michael McCockle, based out of New York, puts up his hand. So he says, the Americans always like to get under the skin of the Germans since World War II, right? So he said, I'll do the due diligence in 1 month. So the German is very upset. He's like, no, Mikey, we need this kind of time required. And the German is fast. So they're having that debate. I put up my hand. So they all look at me. My boss, Britisher, so my name is Tarun Anand, but he used to call me Tarun. So he said, Tarun, what are you saying? I said, Mark, I'd like to do the due diligence. How long will you take, Tarun? I said, 2 weeks. So the German and the American who are arguing with each other, they see the Sardar and they pounce onto me. You don't know anything about Europe. You have never done a deal in European markets. You're going to screw up this deal, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. But Mark steps in and said, no, let Tarun do it. Okay, great. What do? Next moment, that evening book a flight to Frankfurt and I land on Frankfurt airport, guys, and guess what's my first thought? I've never done due diligence in life. Right? Hogi na Sardaro wali baat, right? So you got the back against the wall. So I work like nobody's business. Like I put in like 14, 18, 20 hours a day for 2 weeks, get my report because, right? I go to my boss with the report. He's looking at the report. He finds a massive error. And I was like, gayi bhais pani mein. I'm going to get fired, right? I'm going to lose my job. But somehow he went on and he said, tuck. He finished the report. He said, great. It's got enough for us to take it to the next level of financial closure, non-disclosure agreements between the 2 companies. And I felt like, wow, I was like thinking I beat the Germans and the Americans. But I forgot about that. 6 months later, my boss calls me up. Tarun. My boss used to be based in New York. He said, Tarun, let's have dinner tonight. I'm like, sure, Mark. So I used to live in London. I thought he must have come to, London from New York, and we'll go to his favorite Indian restaurant in Chelsea. But I called up his secretary, and she said, no, the dinner tonight is in New York. I'm sitting in Canary Wharf, London, and I have a dinner which I've committed to in New York. So what do? Run straight to Heathrow Airport, get myself a business class flight, get a suit because I don't know what's the occasion, shower at John F. Kennedy. I'm at the dinner. At the dinner, my boss comes up and opens a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne. And he says, congratulations, Tarun, you're the new global CEO of the treasury business. I'm like, wow, laddu phoot rahe the. I was like, what, just my life's changed. I was just 32 years of age and suddenly I've been given a $2 billion portfolio. I'm like, why me? Because my first thought was, the guys who were the colleagues, right? The Brits, the Americans, the Germans, the French, they were all from top business schools in the world. Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge. I was from SP Jain. Now it's a great school, but nobody's heard about it in US, right? It's a fantastic school, don't get me wrong. So why me? The question is like, why me? I didn't have that caliber of Wharton, Harvard. And all those colleagues were minimum 5 to 10 years more experienced than me. They were all like senior people in, the Reuters world. So I don't even have experience. I don't have the caliber of Ivy League school. Then why me? My boss told me, you know how to smash the deadline. I said, what do you mean? He said, buddy, remember that time for that when you said you would do the due diligence in 2 weeks, if you hadn't put up your hand for a 2-week due diligence, we would have lost a $25 million deal. I'm like, I don't get it. He said, our competitors, Bloomberg, had already put in a bid, and if we couldn't have matched that bid, we would have lost the deal. That's what I'm looking for in a global CEO, speed, right? Execution, and I knew, I could make out, you've not done it. But you were willing to take that leap of faith. You're willing to take that risk, right? So that's what, and my life changed. My life changed. Then he says, by the way, the new job is in New York. And I'm like, I was very comfortable in London. I was staying right opposite Hyde Park, right? You can't get a better location on Bayswater Road. And I'm like, no. He's like, no, I've sweetened the deal. So what do you mean? He said, I've booked a penthouse apartment for you in New York's Times Square. And I'm like, wow, because in New York's Times Square, only CEOs or celebrity actors, actresses, stay there. And I was like, okay, right? So this is what happens. So if you're willing to take that leap of faith, the world can be yours, right? So decisiveness, taking that risk can really propel your career beyond what you can even imagine. I don't know whether you know this, but I was very, very privileged to have represented India in rugby. Did you know we had a national team? Okay, we are not highly ranked, but I still played for India. So rugby is a crazy game, right? It's a physical contact game. You go pow. In fact, it's even more than American football. Those, I call them, I would have used a term, but there are people here, but those scaredy poos wear all this helmet and all this, massive shoulder, this, that. In rugby, it's physical, right? There's no protection whatsoever. Now, the game of rugby is like every other game of life, right? Or any other role, right? The game of HR, the game of marketing, the game has its basics, right? So, like in football, it's passing. Rugby, it's all about possession. The team that gets the possession normally tends to win. So, how do you get possession? So we used to play with big guys, right? We used to play with the Greater Bombay Police, the Maharashtra State Police, Armenians, the Sri Lankans, all big guys. So before every match, we would get into the huddle. You know that huddle? And some of you might know my captain. Some of you might have heard of him, Rahul Bose, right? So Rahul would stand with us and say, the first tackle, right? The first tackle, hit them hard, hit them so hard that you can hear bones break. It's amazing to hear bones break if it's not yours, right? Right? So why? Because the moment you hit the guy, the first tackle hard, the next time he's running, he's got that little bit of a fear in his mind, and that's where you get your possession. So in the game of life, it's figuring out the basics of your business, and then what you guys know better than me, it's called Kaizen, continuous improvement. So we have never reached perfection, we will never reach perfection, keep getting better and better. I'm going to tell you, I got fired 5 times, or maybe 6, I can't remember the 6, but 5 I have clear. In my career, I've got 5 times fired. And I love it. Why? Because every time I've got fired, I've got a double promotion. How does that happen? How does that happen? You just got fired, and suddenly you get a double promotion. I got fired in the same company 5 times, I got a double promotion in the same company 5 times. That's how I accelerate in my career, right? So why I'm telling you this is that if you are putting tremendous value, why did I get fired? Not because I did some hanky-panky, not because I had poor performance. It's just somebody sitting in London, New York says, 500 jobs gone. And I'm one of those 500. Or this division we're going to let go. or that, two structures, we're going to let go of this designations all over the world. So it's random, right? It's not something you have control over. But if you're doing so good, and if you're continuously contributing, that's why I tell every employee, I tell my students, when you enter the job force, you will get a JD. I think you guys know something about JDs, right? I say read it once, tear it and throw it into the dustbin. Now you might get upset. I'm saying do whatever, of course you got to do the JD. JD ke bina to chalega nahi. But do more than just JD, do whatever is required in that role so that you create your impact across the organization and then you become the most valuable person in the organization. And then when the organization goes through turmoil, which in these days is common, then you are the most valuable person. So even if you get hiked, you will be the one who will get the next big job, right? So that's the concept of making sure that you're contributing beyond. Many people say, this is not my job, right? Ye mera kaam nahi hai. Sorry, if you want to be a global CEO, you've got to say, everything's my job. Why? Because when you get to the top, everything's your job. Everything's your role, right? Don't be a BMW. Do you want a BMW? Anybody would like a BMW around here? No, not BMW, which car? Audi, chalo Audi. Anybody here? Jag, Ferrari, now we're talking. This side? Mercedes, Rolls-Royce, great. So if you want a BMW, no, okay, not BMW, Audi, Jaguar, blah, 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 don't be a BMW. What does that mean? Don't ever, ever, ever get into bitching, moaning, and wailing. BMW, bitching, moaning, wailing. I'm sure in your organizations, there's always some people who say, ye theek nahi hai, wo theek nahi hai, ye acha nahi hai, boss kharab hai, CEO idiot hai, Maharashtra CM acha hai. Narendra Modi theek nahi hai. Matlab, there'll be always some people who will always be cribbing. I'm sure you know these people. They are the BMW club. Right? Stay away from them. How do you stay away? Next time the BMW comes to you, right? And you know ye sala chik chik karne wala hai. Pura sar ka dimag ka dahi karne wala hai, right? Next time you come, you say BMW. He's like, where? Hurry, you. And he's like, I'm BMW, right? So you should have that conversation with your BMWs. So I was just newly married, arranged marriage, total arranged, right? Means I had not even spoken to her before, that kind of arranged. Before I decided to marry her. So it was weird. And then to make her feel nice, I took her to Paris for it wasn't a honeymoon, by the way, but so we would check into a hotel, and I was a young, manager, and so pain would come suddenly. So this girl who doesn't know me at all, because throughout our dating period, apparently she didn't even want to speak to me. I was speaking to her sister or friends, which I didn't know because I never heard her voice. So whatever, she's like, just sar khata hai. So she didn't know me. I'm staying in the same room, and suddenly pain comes. So I go to the corner, and I say, get out of me, get out of me, get out of me, get out of me. So she's wondering, ye pagal aadmi se shaadi kiya? Imagine suddenly you don't know some guy and he starts screaming for 20 minutes. He's like screaming. And then the pain would go. And can I report you, today, post those days when I used to scare away the pain, it's been now more than 96 se kitna time ho gaya? 2002 I got married. So kitna time ho gaya? 20 saal baad. Since then I've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, I've done Base Camp Kanchenjunga, and in a few months I'm going to do Everest. I'm training for Everest. The best part is, my discs, if today you do my MRI, my discs are still out. So the discs are not there, but the pain's gone. This is called mind over body. What I'm trying to tell you that if you can take physical pain and condition your mind that physical pain should not come to you, imagine negativity. You should be able to banish it. First principle is, hey, I'm thinking negative. Start becoming, knowing that you're thinking negative, and then kill it, right? Throw it out, right? So that's how you become a super professional.